Disclaimer time, I'm friends with the devs of this game. It's important to me that I be transparent with you on all matters like this because it's something that matters to me from content creators and reviewers that I follow, so hey, there you go. now you know. Hey, so it's been a while since we talked about Innerspace, hasn't it? In the 2 years that have passed since that preview build I talked about, a lot has changed. Innerspace has gone through more than a few tweaks, and it's finally out in a delicious final form all ready for eating. Innerspace is a lot of things, and it's easy to point to a lot of influences for the title, but I want to focus on one aspect of the game today: how its exploration and puzzles weave together to not only complement each other, but also serve to drive the player's progression and curiosity. Now this is gonna get a little spoilery. While Innerspace is a little light on direct plot, it's one of those games that's far more enjoyable if everything you stumble across is a surprise. So I encourage you to go in as blind as possible. It's a pretty short game, so if you haven't played it, then just save this to your watch later list and come back after you've had your fun. We good? Okay, cool. Let's dive in. In order for you to fully understand how well all of Innerspace's systems complement each other and work together, we need to frame all these mechanics I'm going to talk about in some good old-fashioned context. Innerspace takes place inside of spherical chambers joined together by warp gates. The whole cluster of areas is collectively called the Innerspace, and your goal as a freshly woken sentient aircraft is to assist your sentient submarine pal, the Archaeologist, in collecting remnants of an ancient and vanished civilization known only as the Ancestors, so you can preserve their history. Along the way, you learn about what happened to the Ancestors, you encounter large entities known as demigods, and you discover some hints that there may actually be a way to leave the Innerspace. So now that we have our frame of context, I can start really describing the picture we're going to put inside of it. In the foreground of our painting, we have exploration, the most common thing you do while you're looking for artifacts and ways to progress in Innerspace. The background of the game, its puzzles, are only slightly less common and less of a focus than the exploration, since you have to actually find them in order to solve them. But they do often lead to more exploration once you figure out the solution, so it becomes a constant loop. Each of the goals you have throughout Innerspace are their own sort of puzzle, and even the encounters with demigods are their own kind of puzzle. In this way, every piece of the painting that is Innerspace comes together. The mechanics complement each other nicely, pushing you to play in a way that's smooth, natural, and entirely delightful. One of the objectives you'll find yourself working on is artifact hunting. These little figurines are more than just collectibles. They all have a bit of narrative goodness to them, and some even affect gameplay. Each artifact, when analyzed, gives you a bit of insight into the history of the Ancestors. The artifacts had a purpose, or are reminiscent of a piece of technology the Ancestors used. And while some are certainly mundane things like toys or simple models, others are examples of technology the lost civilization had. It's those artifacts, the fancy techie ones, that end up providing upgrades for your airframes as you progress. Artifacts are scattered throughout each of the areas you explore. Some are easy to find, some are hidden away and need to be found, and others are in plain sight but you can't actually collect the damn thing until you activate some kind of ancient contraption in the Innerspace. Hunting for these things works a bit like a metal detector on a beach. As you're flying around, you'll get little audio notifications when you're near one of them in the form of a little hum. The closer to a thing you are, the louder it gets. There's also a faint glow that'll appear at the edge of the screen at a certain distance from the artifact that essentially points in the direction it's hidden in. This pushes for exploration in a few ways. First, because of how metal detectors work, you end up combing and exploring almost every inch of each sphere. Then, once you've actually found an artifact, or halfway found an artifact, you sometimes have to search around for a way to get it, which is a puzzle itself. This might sound like it could get tedious, and I think that if all you were doing in this game was hunting down artifacts like this, that'd probably be true. But thankfully, that's not the case. And since there are other things you're working on while searching for artifacts, it doesn't become exhausting to do so. Next up, we've got the globs of wind that are scattered around each area. In-game, wind is a collectible that takes the form of these weird floating things. And much like the artifacts, wind serves as more than just a collectible. It works almost like experience points in an RPG. You don't really spend wind though, and that's the main difference. It's kind of like a continually growing pool of experience, and as you cross greater thresholds of collected wind, you'll be able to just apply new upgrades provided by analyzed artifacts. The upgrades range from flight improvements across all your frames to entirely new airframes that function totally differently. In addition to unlocking your hot new upgrades, wind serves as a general progress marker and can be used to unlock paths to move forward. In true collectathon fashion, plenty of the little floaty things are hidden all over each area you're going to explore, behind walls, closed doors, and even objects in the environment that you can destroy. Because of its multiple uses and its placement, wind is another one of the things in Innerspace that pushes the player to explore the world further. As an added little bonus onto the exploration factor, the way wind is placed around areas often serves as a hint or a guide. Some of the trails lead you into new, fascinating places, while others lead you to a puzzle to solve or an object to activate so you can progress even further. By extension of that, wind is also just a good way to tell if you've been somewhere or not, leading to tasty, organic exploration. The last two things I want to talk about are pretty heavily connected, so we're just going to knock them both out in one fancy dumb bullet point. The main conflict of Innerspace shows up in the form of encounters with demigods that I mentioned earlier. These things are big entities that, according to legends, are the reasons the ancestors vanished. The activation of warp gates is gated behind completing an encounter with the demigod. You also get a whole bunch of wind for beating each demigod, which in turn helps you unlock upgrades, yada yada, and eventually you escape after subduing the mythical big boys. The encounters with the demigods lead you all over the area that you're in, with the exception of one of them, but that's a spoiler, so we'll just not talk about that one. Okay, moving on. I also feel it's worth pointing out that the demigod encounters themselves aren't 100% a melding of puzzles and exploration, but the entire lead up to the encounter is, and that's the other half of this point, so here we go. That was my transition. So good at this. In order to actually activate the encounters with the demigods, you have to mess around with stuff in the environment. Since we're trying to stay light on spoilers, I'll sum it up like this. In one of the areas, there are switches that you need to fly into in order to unlock the encounter. In another area, there are objects in the environment that you need to break, and in the third encounter, you get to chase some things down. Once you've done all of whatever thing needs to be done in the area that you're in, the demigod appears and the encounter begins proper. The puzzle side of this is figuring out what you actually need to do in each area to begin the encounter, and the exploration part of it is the hunt for all the damn things once you've figured out what the hell you actually need to do. That's as straightforward a melding as you can get with game systems, and it is frickin' smooth. Each objective you have in Innerspace gives you a reason to spend more time digging around your surroundings, checking each nook and cranny of the level to make sure that you've gathered everything you can before moving on. The magical part about this is that thanks to how well the systems are connected to your goals and how seamlessly puzzles push you into exploration, which in turn pushes you in the direction of more puzzles, it never gets tiring and never becomes tedious. This is a fantastic example of a combination of systems that subtly guide the player towards a fun experience, and Innerspace does it so incredibly well that before I'd realized it, I'd finished my first playthrough and immediately started a second. Whatever you work on, keep the idea of synergy between its aspects in mind, and you'll end up with something pretty damn great. So, hey, we have a bit of an announcement. We launched the website! It's crazy to me. It's crazy. It's wild. Indie-bytes.com is the website. That dash is important because somebody is camping just Indie Bytes, so we couldn't get it. Whatever. It's up. It's awesome. It's great. On the website right now, you can find pretty much all of my personal favorites of Season 3 of Indie Bytes. But in addition to that, we're going to be having articles, interviews, and maybe some dev pieces. I think that'd be personally really cool, and is something I want to get on there. But who knows? Who knows if it'll happen? So yeah, right now, something that is up there is a Kickstarter article about a game called Cross Sneak Plus. It's really cool. Go check out the article. Go check out the game. Links in the description. And I plan on doing Extra Bytes, which is a series of articles when I have extra thoughts about a game, like say Innerspace. I go and I make an article to talk about those extra thoughts because I can do that. That's really it. I do want to give a few shout outs real quick, a couple shout outs. First, I want to give a shout out to my buddy Javi for helping me edit this piece. It was a bit difficult to get this one out, but he took a look at it, gave me some tips, and made some tweaks, and it turned out a lot better. Also, similar shout out to Miles, who did the same thing, gave me a second pass on it, and helped improve it. That's it. So thanks for joining for this episode of Indie Bytes. Remember to do the YouTube stuff. I'll see you next time. Bye.